has anyone made it before as a comedian? They're like, well, yeah. Well, well, then I'll figure it out. Hey, it's Walter here, and you're at the Think Profit podcast, where we're going to help you develop a rock-solid trading confidence and avoid the potentially endless cycle of system switching. Right, Hugh?
That's right. We're going to help you develop a wealth mindset, develop a trading strategy that fits your core personality, and help you overcome the obstacles that stop over 90% of traders.
All right, Hugh, sounds good. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, Walter, what are the basic trading personality types that you've seen?
Well, it depends on the dimensions you're looking at. So I would break people down into two categories, and we'll be really simple. Okay, people who focus on the reward, and there's people who focus on the pain. And then there are people who are super conscientious, and there are people who are not so much. Okay, so we'll just do those four things. Okay. So what you want, I believe, what you want to do is focus on the pain, but also be conscientious. I think the worst combination, so I could if you had if you drew a box with 4 spots, you know what I mean? So you could be really conscientious and focused on pain, which is basically losses in trading. If you're there in that area, what that means is you're probably not going to risk too much. Now you can go extreme. So I know this guy, he was the co-founder of Awanda, and he was super extreme, too far. He was just risking 0.1% and stuff like that. He was really, really low, really risk aversive. So the other side, so you have those 4 squares. So you have risk averse or focus on the pain and very conscientious. Conscientious just means you're very meticulous and you're aware of what you're doing and you're not sloppy. And you know what I mean? You're so someone who's very good at being organized is conscientious, right? Mm-hmm. And it also helps to be self-reflective too, but that doesn't necessarily mean, conscientiousness may or may not relate to that.
Hey there, I hope you're finding this episode useful. I just wanted to let you know that Walter and I give away something valuable every month that helps traders improve their skills. You can enter to win by simply leaving an iTunes review and leaving a comment on our YouTube videos. At the end of each month, we'll look at the comments and reviews from the month, and we'll pick a winner at random. Each comment and each review counts for 1 entry during the month that it's submitted. So if you're interested in that, be sure to enter after this podcast is over. All right, back to the episode.
Then if you're focused on the reward and you're low in conscientiousness, that would be the worst, because in that case, all you really think about is how much trading can make you. You don't consider the drawdowns, the losing streaks, and you're not very good at this is the kind of person that's always kind of swapping systems and oh, well, so-and-so said to buy the euro, so I'm just going to do that because, he's always right. Even though you've never tested or anything, his strategy, just kind of that sort of thing. And you can do a conscientiousness test. We can put that in the show notes and see where you are there. But that's what you want. You want to be higher on conscientiousness, and you kind of want to focus on the risk or the pain of trading, because that's what's going to end up ending the game for you. It's not the reward. The reward's great, and it's great to look at that, and it's great to target that. The driving feature of your system should be dependent upon the risk side of it, because that's going to define how long you get to play the game. So yeah, that's what I would say. Cool. That's how I look at it. So those 4 dimensions, those 2 dimensions with 2 categories. I know it's very simple, but that's an easy way to see it.
Oh, that makes sense. I think for me, it's people are either focused or unfocused. Focused people tend to figure it out, and if you're not focused, then they tend to go off, do something else, and go flip houses or something like that. So
yeah, exactly. It's a means to an end. And if you really press every trader, they'll even in the beginning when you say, "Oh, I love it" and all that, they'll still tell you it's a means to an end, and that's true. But you're right. There are people who are totally determined, and I can't remember. I remember there was a comedian, and his parents were like, "What? You're going to be a comedian? Are you serious? That's ridiculous. You'll never make it," or whatever. And he's like, "Has anyone made it before as a comedian?" They're like, "Well, yeah." Well, well, then I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Then that's, you know what I mean? Those are the kinds of people. It's the same in trading. Oh, well, you're going to be a trader? Well, everyone loses money, blah, blah, blah. Well, has anyone ever figured out how to trade? Okay, well, I'm going to do it. That's the kind of the approach I think that works. It can be painful. There are shortcuts. Information is helpful, but too much information can get you off track. I mean, there's so many things you have to keep in mind. But yeah, I would definitely say that's a big factor, what you pointed out. That's a huge one. When I was undergraduate school, one of my professors, she kind of made a side bet with her lab assistant. She didn't know, I was dating her lab assistant. She didn't know, and she told me. She's like, there was me and my other friend. We were both trying to get into graduate school because we both wanted to get our PhD. And my friend was way smarter than I ever would be, right? He was naturally gifted, okay? at a lot of things. And she said to the lab assistant, who was my girlfriend, and she didn't know, she said, which one do you think is going to go further or whatever in psychology? And the professor basically bet on my friend. He's like, well, he's way smarter, but he's not really that motivated. Like we all knew that he was really smart, but he wasn't that motivated. He never really had to try. And then, and then my girlfriend's like, well, I don't know. What about, Walter? Cause he's like super motivated. And she's like, yeah, but he's not that smart. So yeah, it was pretty funny. Anyway, fast forward, my friend, he went to graduate school for a year and dropped out. So he never, I went through it. Yeah. So it's exactly what you're saying, basically. So at least in this one instance. Yeah. So I agree. Yeah. Motivation is true, man. Like if you have that motivation and you're determined no matter what, then you'll find a way. You will find a way. You just have to do it long enough and then you can get it. You can definitely get it. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, talking about personality types, what do you think about like all these personality type tests? Do they help? Do you think they just hinder?
It depends on what you're trying to do, I guess. This is a big thing in psychology. In personality psychology, people always talk bad. Like the one I was telling you about, the conscientiousness, that's from one called the Big Five, right? And, they talk about the 5 dimensions. And it's kind of like intelligence. In psychology, intelligence is a hot topic too, because people go, well, what is it? Is it a general thing or is it like individual specific things? And it's a big debate. If you're a person who's trying to get better at trading, then I do believe there are some tests that can help you at least become more self-aware and probably focus on something. Like if you identify something is your weakness, then that's really helpful. That's a very good thing to know. It's also kind of, which I think is what you're hinting at, it's also kind of taken to an extreme where it's like you take this test and you'll know for sure if you're going to make it. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like that's like, because personality changes. That's another thing. Yeah. We used to think that it was like solid set. Not true. Personality changes. You can become more conscientious or you can become less conscientious. You can become more determined and you can change your mindset from sort of a defeatist sort of woe is me, everything always, my life, I always have bad luck, to being more of I'm going to make my own luck, I'm going to bounce back from this, I'm going to make this work sort of thing. So yeah, totally possible to build up things like resilience, conscientiousness, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I think when companies hire just based on not just, but primarily based on things like Myers-Briggs and all that kind of stuff, I think it's just very one-dimensional. And at least in my experience, if you take several of these tests and you kind of pick out the parts that resonate with you, those are the ones that are usually the things that you need to work on, either your strengths or your weaknesses, right?
And not everyone's honest, and not all of those and not all of them have a lie scale too. So like some of these tests, they have a lie scale and that will get flagged, and then when they interpret the test, they'll be like, oh, well, it's likely that they weren't being honest with us. If you think about it, I had a really good professor in a personality class, and he was saying, we give people personality tests because we can't follow them around. If we really wanted to know what someone was like, we would just follow them around all day, right? Yeah. Which is exactly what you're saying. Like if you were going to go to a job and they wanted to hire you, they could give you a personality test, right? And try and figure like, okay, this is what you're like or whatever. Or why don't they just give you a trial? A 60-day trial, let you work there for a while, and they'll see, are you going to be good at this? Are you going to pick it up or are you not? That sort of thing. So I have to say that psychology is such a new field, and there's so many things we don't know. I mean, I think about things in medicine that we don't know, but at least medicine's been around longer, where psychology is just such a new field where it's really the early days. And some of the things that we thought in the 60s are completely thrown away today, So your point is well taken. It's anyone who tells you that you were a this because you took the Myers-Briggs and you came out as that or whatever, it's going to change. The way that we think of personality is going to change, just like it has. It has already. We already know that it's more fluid than we ever thought. So, yeah.
And it really depends on the situation too, right? Like under stress, you might act differently.
Yeah, ecosystems. Yeah, exactly. And different. So when you're in different environments, you adopt a different, and you probably noticed that. Like if you're at home, you'll slip into the one when you're around your parents, when you're around certain friends, when you're around a work environment, when you're around like a professional conference environment or whatever. Like you're always going to be like a little bit different. You adopt a different. You might be super outgoing and gregarious with your circle of friends, but then you go to a conference and you kind of withdraw and you just kind of watch, and you don't reach out and make friends until, like you said, we talked about this in another episode, like later on at the bar when everyone's got some drinks in them or whatever, you know what I mean? Then maybe it's a bit easier for you or whatever. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely dependent on where you're at for sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
All information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not trading or investment advice.